What's up, Generation GC fam? Ooh, do you like that? I like that. I think that's kind of fun. Welcome to episode 17 of Generation GC, Waldorf Worldwide, from the album Good Charlotte, with Mike Henneberger, author of Rock Bottom at the Renaissance. Last week, we talked about Cold Song from Generation RX, and next week, we'll be talking about a song from The Young and the Hopeless. So Mike recently released this book, Rock Bottom at the Renaissance, an emo kid's journey of falling in and out of love in and with New York City. It's a fantastic book. It's a mixtape memoir set largely around a weekend in 2011, but it also features a lot of flashbacks, and each chapter is set to a different song. Good Charlotte is not one of the artists featured in the book, but I was really excited to have Mike on the show because a lot of the themes of his book relate to things that GC talks about and that I know a lot of fans relate to. Coming from nothing but having really big dreams, dealing with depression and anxiety and substance abuse, thoughts of suicide, and trying to find love. The book is definitely very intense, so I've linked some resources in the show notes. Mike also runs a Berger Joint, Berger Media, which is a full-service creative production and marketing agency, and he's also the founder of Zero Platoon, a nonprofit organization that uses music and comedy to help members of the military cope with any emotional or psychological distress that comes with military life. And something I learned largely from talking to Mike was that the mental health struggles that a lot of people in the military have, it's not just combat-related PTSD. There's a lot beyond that. So, pretty important. Please look up Zero Platoon. That's actually how Mike and I first met back in 2014. He was doing a tour with two of my favorite bands, Pentimento and Have Mercy, and I interviewed him for Circles and Soundwaves. Today is also a great day to arrest the cops that killed Breonna Taylor. I've linked a petition in the show notes demanding justice on her behalf, so please sign that, spread the word, tell all your friends to sign it. It takes like 2 seconds, and the more people that sign it, the better. And as a reminder, please visit blacklivesmatters.card.co for info on how you can help on the Black Lives Matter movement. There's information on protests, information on where to donate, even playlists and videos to watch where they'll donate streaming revenue if you don't have money to donate. There's also information on how to educate yourself, as well as even more petitions to sign. And on another note, Generation GC stickers are here. Do you want some stickers? You've got two options. Number one, support the show on Anchor. Become a supporter of the show. Any amount is fine. 99 cents, $4.99, $9.99. Any amount is fine. And that helps me sustain the show. It helps me have the right equipment, microphones, windscreens, headphones, as well as do things like print stickers and get them mailed to you guys, because that costs money, of course. Number two, donate to any organization listed at blacklivesmatters.card.co. I thought that'd be a good way to encourage you guys to get involved. So you're going to support the show, or you're going to make a charitable donation. Then you're going to send me a screenshot of your support or donation, as well as your mailing address. You can DM me on Twitter or Instagram at GenerationGCPod, B-O-D, or send an email to generationgcpod@gmail.com, and I will mail you stickers. I will also occasionally tweet or post on the Instagram story about other ways you guys can get stickers, whether that's good deeds that you can do or ways to help spread the word about the show. So definitely make sure you are following Generation GC on Twitter and Instagram if you are not already. Mike and I have a great conversation today. We talk about so many different things, and I think you're really going to enjoy hearing his perspective. So I am very excited to roll right on into episode 17. So yeah, we're talking about Waldorf Worldwide this week, and that's track 2 on Good Charlotte's debut self-titled album. I noted the track listing, so it follows Little Things, which honestly is like, a friend of mine, Joel, just asked me my favorite album openers of all time, and I think I named Little Things as one of them.
Yeah.
It's just such a great intro to the album. And then you have this song, which is so hopeful, so much optimism, and then they go into Motivation Proclamation, which is complete opposite, right? It's a track about just being depressed and not having any motivation. But they've done that a couple times in their track listings. They'll have like a whole bunch of really frustrated and angry songs, and then mixing in some hope in there, and I've always found that really interesting. This was not a single, and it definitely wasn't like a mainstay in their live shows. It wasn't like a guarantee you would definitely hear it, but I was pretty surprised they've played it as recently as last May. Like,
yeah, I saw that.
I don't know.
Surprised by that too.
Yeah, like, I don't know, little things, Motivation Proclamation, you hear those pretty frequently, maybe festival song, but I was surprised, but that I like that because it gives me hope that maybe, you know, once shows happen again, maybe I can hear this live.
Yeah, you know, I guess I don't expect them. I haven't seen these guys in probably over a decade. Right. Definitely, you know, at least a decade. So I don't even know what they would play live now. I also kind of like fell off, and I think at some point we'll probably, I don't know if this is better to just put out right away in the beginning, but I think so, because it sets up like why I am not as familiar with their newer stuff, and it's just like I think there was a point where I kind of like my tastes matured. And sure. even when my taste matured, like I still love MxPx. I still listen to everything MxPx puts out. You know, I'll check in on Newfound Glory. So like all this pop punk stuff that I loved back in this, you know, at this time, I still listen to a lot of it. But yeah. What happened with Good Charlotte for me is my brother and I, who started a magazine called The Vent, which is how I started writing and how I started doing music journalism.
Right.
And we went to cover the Honda Civic Tour that was...
with like Newfound Glory, 2003 or something?
Yeah, Newfound Glory, Good Charlotte, and in Texas, the opener... I just looked this up this weekend because I was listening to this record this weekend. And MxPx opened, or actually Stretch Armstrong opened, which was a band I loved then too. They're like one of the only hardcore bands I was into back then. And then MxPx played, and then it was Good Charlotte and Newfound Glory, probably a co-headline, I think.
Yeah, I think it was co-headline.
But so I interviewed MxPx on video there at that show, and I interviewed Stretch Armstrong. And my brother and I like kind of parted ways in the concert,
mm-hmm.
and he told me that Good Charlotte's tour manager, and I'll never forget this guy's name, Mark Immerman, saw my brother using his like camera to take pictures, but said he was taking video, and like my brother like offered to show him, but the guy had some security guards with them and threw my brother on the ground.
Oh my God.
Put his foot on my brother's chest and took the tape out of the camera.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. So right after that, and we like tried the whole time to try to get the tape back, to get those interviews. And it also had a wedding that my brother had shot for somebody.
Oh, no. And he hadn't backed up the wedding yet?
No.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. So we were trying for like hours at the show to get it back, and just couldn't get it back. And so like that kind of immediately... You kind of felt burned? It made me think like, Jesus, like you're that, like it's that big of a deal if somebody, like even if my brother was taking video, like, is that what you do to one of your fans who's taking video? Like, what do you care?
Yeah.
And so
I mean, it's something that it sounds like, I mean, who knows if the band even had any idea what happened,
sure.
But I could totally see why that would sour your experience. Cause I've had run-ins with tour managers and such that, you know, got angry because of like where I was taking photos or whatever, and nothing quite that violent, thankfully. But I've had a few like run-ins with tour managers over the years where I'm just like, oh, and it just like sours your experience, and like, I do get that.
Yeah, but so that's why like I just kind of, you know, fell off of Good Charlotte, like that whole experience. So I didn't really keep up with them that much. I mean, as long as they were getting played on the radio, like as long as they had singles on radio, I would listen to their singles, and I'd still like appreciate their singles, which I guess, they kind of still managed to get singles on the radio. I guess their last like couple records, but yeah. So that's why I'm not as familiar with them, and so I only know them playing stuff from like the first 2 or 3 records. So yeah, I mean that's why like it's not hard for me to imagine them playing this, just because I don't know what else they play.
The first time, and I've talked about this several times on the show, but the first time I saw them was they were touring off Chronicles of Life and Death, and that record, and when they toured off like Good Morning Revival, there was definitely a couple of years where like they really didn't play almost anything from the first record. So I love hearing people who have been to some of those early shows.
I can see them like wanting to get away from it then, because exactly. I feel like they started maybe taking themselves a little too seriously, but maybe because they felt like they had to like escape the like pop punk poster boys that they were. And so I could see them wanting to get away from that, but I think, this happens with every band that kind of comes from that time. And, they stop playing. Like I remember seeing Brand New, and they didn't play anything off of, it was when The Devil and God came out. They didn't play anything off of Your Favorite Weapon, and they didn't play like the singles off of Deja Entendu.
Weird. And
they played mostly Devil and God, but Devil and God was so new that like nobody really wanted to hear that. But then like when they came back, they realized like, oh, we actually wouldn't be here without this stuff and our fans. So let's give our fans what they want. And that's probably what Good Charlotte,
I think so, definitely.
Now.
So slightly off topic question, but I have it noted in my notes, and it's bugging me, so we have to ask it. Is the title of this song one word or 2 words? Because I've always believed it was 1 word. Waldorf Worldwide.
I thought it was. Didn't you write it, or isn't it written somewhere like with an X in between or something?
No, I don't think so. It's like usually, I feel like it's usually 1 word. But then if you go on Genius, it has it as 2 words. But, I feel like I would trust what's on Spotify over what's on Genius.com.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess so, because that's got to come from like record labels and stuff, right?
Yeah.
But you know what? I'm like looking at Google Images trying to find the record cover, like the CD cover. Yeah. Did you try to do that?
I did, and I think it was 1 word on the record.
Yeah, I think it was 1 word, actually. You said that.
Yeah. So, Mike, I want to help our listeners get to know you a little bit.
All right.
So, first question I always ask everyone is, when did you first hear Good Charlotte, and what did you first think of them?
It's strange because, like, I'm pretty sure, even though I was very into, like, a lot of kind of underground punk, I guess is what we called it before, which I guess isn't a thing anymore just because of the internet, right? Like, I guess nothing's underground anymore.
Well, it's the underground is a lot more easily accessible, I think. Yeah,
but I think like nobody calls it that because it's all out there already. Like nothing is hidden, nothing. Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, so like I mean, just to get some like timeline here, I graduated high school class of 2000. I graduated early in 99, but I graduated class of 2000. And so when did this record come out?
2000. September 2000.
Okay, so I was actually already out of high school. And September of 2000, I actually would have been on tour with my Christian ska band I was the lead singer of for 5 years. And so like, and that's actually another thing about Good Charlotte is I feel like they had like a lot of like subtle Christian stuff in their music in this early record, at least.
In the early record, yes. And then they have later records that get much more clearly,
Oh yeah.
Religious. Yeah.
And they weren't like cussing a lot, which was like,
Mhm.
you know, I mean, we were all Christian kids, so we, you know, tried to listen to, you know, cleaner music.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I still think though the first time I heard them was probably on MTV, just like, you know, everybody else. And yeah, and then I was actually thinking about that before us talking about this, because like there weren't a lot of bands that, like, I was pretty on top of like pop punk and punk back then.
Mm-hmm.
And I would learn from like shows and liner notes, like bands thanked other bands in their liner notes, so I'd go look them up or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, I can't remember if I had listened to them first or seen them first with MxPx. I'm trying to figure out when that tour was.
I want to say it was like, because it was definitely before The Young and the Hopeless had really hit. So it was like very early 2000s. And okay. I had found a really cool interview where Benji and Joel talked about like bands that were influential to pop punk, and they mentioned MxPx. So I imagine it would have been pretty cool just for them to tour with a band that they saw as influential.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I mean MxPx was like the second concert I ever went to. So when I was like 13, the first concert I ever went to was Blink-182 and Unwritten Law.
Wow.
For $5 in a club.
Oh my God.
Of like 200 capacity in Corpus Christi, Texas, and they have not played Corpus Christi again. Maybe they did on this.
Wait.
No, I don't even think this tour.
Wait, Mike, you said you paid $5 to see Blink-182?
Yeah, this is 96.
Yeah, I've seen Blink twice, and I think both times I paid like $90.
Yeah, crazy, right?
Love that.
And this was like, I've like done my research on this because I've mentioned it a bunch to people, but it's like months before Damn It hit the radio or whatever, like first single, whatever first radio single they had, it was like 6 months before that. So yeah, like Dude Ranch hadn't come out yet or anything. It was just like, I knew them from Cheshire Cat. And so yeah, that was my first show. And then my mom drove me and my friends up to San Antonio to see MxPx. So that was the second show. So their MxPx is like one of my first punk bands.
Wow.
So yeah, I was definitely going to see them. I can't remember who else was on that tour, but I remember walking out of this club called La Zona Rosa, which hasn't existed for years in Austin. But it used to be one of the big clubs there. And all the guys from Good Charlotte were just like out in the like patio area, just hanging out with people. And I thought that was cool, but they were nobodies then. You know?
So Mike, you just released your book Rock Bottom at the Renaissance in June, but the book itself was written during a weekend in 2011.
Yeah.
So why release it now?
So it's a very personal book about a really dark time in my life when I have major depressive disorder and anxiety disorder and ADD. And, it was a point where like I was at my worst with some of those things.
Yeah. Hence the title. Yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't finish. I wrote most of it that weekend, and it kind of like came to form that weekend. But then, like as you read it, there's some flashbacks in it and stuff, which I added later. But the thing is that like after that hotel weekend that I wrote a lot of it, I didn't touch it for probably at least a year because it was such a dark weekend for me, and I was in this like dark.
It's hard to go back to it.
Yeah, like I didn't know if I was ever going to finish it because I didn't want to put myself in that headspace again because I knew it was like not a good place to be.
Yeah.
And so I didn't finish it for a couple years. Like I, maybe went back and would like add some stuff to it. But I probably finished it around early 2014.
Okay.
And not long after that, I met my wife, or who is now my wife. And so then I started dating her, and didn't really know if I would like put it out because of some of the stuff that's in there.
Sure. Yeah.
And I mean, I had no fear that like she would judge me for it. She was well aware of like stuff I had dealt with. Some of the stuff that I mentioned in that book, from my days in the Army and stuff. She's well aware of like the shit that I deal with. So I wasn't worried about that, but I just didn't want her to like be hurt or be embarrassed by some of the stuff, you know? And it, you know, as we've been since we started dating, you know, if it ever got to where we established early, or she established early, really, that she didn't want to know anything about like my past relationships or anything like that.
Right, which is fair, you know?
Yeah. And so she knew I had this book, but she thought, you know, it was, she thought it was something more about dating and, you know, sleeping around or stuff. And she hasn't read it, and she's not planning on it, which I also totally get too, you know?
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. But, yeah, so for a long time also, first I was scared to put it out because of, you know, what people would think of me.
Oh yeah.
And then I was scared to put it out because of her, and her family's so great too. And, yeah, that just, you know, really, that's it. I was scared to put it out. But then sometime around like 2015 or 16, I was reading, I would still go back and read it all the time. And, I was reading it, and it hit me that like, I was starting to see it as like a book someone else wrote. And I think like, as I've worked harder to,
like, you're starting to see it as a piece of art and not just you like throwing up your feelings onto a page.
Well, it's like I read it and I don't even see that. It's like a fictional novel to me now, you know? It's like, I read it and I'm like, man, that person had it really bad.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that hit me, like in 2015, 2016, I was reading it and I was like, I'm looking at this as a guy with depression and anxiety reading about somebody else with depression and anxiety. And it's showing me that like objectively, this is something that could help people, because it was, because I was finally able to see it as not me, because I'm so different. And I was like, well, this is just a good book about depression and anxiety. Like, I should put it out.
Yeah.
And maybe it'll help people who have it themselves, but also people who don't have it. Maybe it'll help them understand what their loved one has, you know, or what their friends are dealing with. And so it was probably around like 2016 that I was like back on it. It was like, I gotta put this out. I gotta get this. I gotta put it out, because like, it's also kind of one of the biggest things I've ever done. It's the most important thing I've ever done.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
And I need to get past it so I can do something else, you know?
Yeah.
I feel like this is part of the reason I haven't been like writing as much since, I mean, I used to write like screenplays and stuff, and is because I feel like this thing has to get done first. Like, I always tell people, like, I have a sleeve on my right arm of like World War II planes, and it's maybe half finished, but I started it in like 2009 or something. And then I joined the Army, and like, I moved out of Texas, and then my tattoo artist moved to Asheville, North Carolina. Right? That's where Asheville is, I think. Yeah. Then my tattoo artist moved to North Carolina, and when I moved back to Texas, he wasn't there. And then I went to Asheville once to get you know, some more work done on it. But
Asheville's a cool city to visit.
Yeah, it is. And so I got a little more done on it, but I haven't gotten anything else done, and I haven't gotten a tattoo in like, I don't know, 8 years, 7 years, because I feel like I have to finish this tattoo first, you know?
Yeah, I get that. I for a while I would kind of hold off on tattoos because I had this one really big one that I was like kind of saving up for, which was going to be a Harry Potter tattoo.
Yeah.
You know, in recent events have decided not to get a Harry Potter tattoo at all. But I get that. And I love that story because I definitely have felt some similar things in releasing my book. I told you I hated New York.
Yeah. I've read some of the stuff in there.
I love that. Thank you for reading it.
Yeah, no, of course. I thought it was cool that like we kind of expressed the same thing.
Yes.
In the beginning of our books about like how we feel about writing.
Yes. But, you know, and I know that a few people that have listened to this book that have listened to this podcast have bought my book and read my book. And I will say two pretty stark differences between I Told You I Hated New York and Rock Bottom at the Renaissance is that, you know, my book, I think definitely ends with a lot of hope and like, you know, kind of growth and finding self-worth. But Mike, your book, it is not inspirational. I mean, it's very raw. It's very in the moment as you talk about depression and anxiety and suicide and drug use and heartbreak, and it all intertwines together really well. But it doesn't end with this, you know, kind of magical happy moment that I think people sometimes expect when they read those stories.
Yeah, and I mean, I've actually come to I've been convinced by people like doing, you know, interviews about the book. People have managed to convince me that it is hopeful. I would always say right away that it's not, and like there's no like silver lining or anything. But I've learned, because I've been recording an audiobook version of it just for like promotional stuff. And so I just finished it again last week or like 2 weeks ago. And somehow like the guy in the book, me, maintains like hope that this love thing is real, you know, no matter how like despite the whole book pretty much being about how he's been disappointed time and time again by it not being real, he still like has that hope till like through the end of the book. And so
but you don't find that true love in the book per se.
Sure. No. Yeah, exactly. But, you know, like what I've told people from the beginning is that it's like a early Bayside or Dangerous Summer songs that are like dark and sad and like not very hopeful. But the hope is found in all of us still being here to put those songs and books out. You know, it's like we survived that shit because can I cuss on this?
Yes.
We survived it, and then, you know, they survived it and wrote songs that helped me survive my thing. And I hope that, you know, my book will, you know, show people that we can get past it, even if it's as scary and ugly and dark as the times in my book, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think you gotta dig for the hope, but I guess there is some in there.
I like that. And as I'm like thinking back to the book and hearing you talk, I'm like, okay, I do see that a lot. And I think it's great. Something I appreciated about the book, and that I hope our listeners will too, is the way you intertwine, you know, your other feelings of depression and anxiety and your self-worth with the search for love. What's it like, Mike, when you go back and listen to like those early Bayside songs or the Dangerous Summer songs, some of which are, you know, mentioned in the book?
You know, it's not really any different, I guess. Like, it's different, and then like I love Bayside and the Dangerous Summer, and Jimmy Eat World's another band that has a couple songs in there.
Yep.
Like, I love those songs and those bands. So even back then, you know, like, of course they really helped me, especially Dangerous Summer. Like, they really helped me get through a lot of stuff, but I also just love those bands. So I also have plenty of, you know, memory and life where I wasn't listening to them because I wanted to kill myself, you know? I was listening to them just because I love them. So now, like, when I listen to them, which I still do listen to, like, Old Bayside, Jimmy Eat World, and Dangerous Summer all the time, those bands have never, like, gotten out of my like playlists. Like I'll listen to all their stuff forever. So yeah, I don't just see those songs as songs I listened to when I was in a bad, you know, headspace, because they weren't. They were songs I listened to all the time. It just so happened that they also helped me in those downtimes, you know?
Yeah. No, I love that. And I will, you know, and I'm sure I'll probably say something about this in the intro, you know, to clarify for listeners, Good Charlotte is not one of the bands in Mike's book, but I've known Mike for a while, and I think the book is something that our listeners will get a lot from and that they'll really appreciate. And, you know, we were chatting back and forth just because I know, Mike, you've always had great things to say, and I wanted to have you on the show. And you talked about, you know, how Good Charlotte was a band that you saw that came from nothing and always believed they would make it, which, you know, obviously Waldorf Worldwide seemed like a really great fit. You know, you came from a small town in Texas. You did not have a well-off upbringing at all. And, you know, here you are now in New York City with such an incredible career. I mean, did you always believe that you would make it? Like, did at that early age, were you like, yep, I'm definitely going to get out and make it in my career?
I mean, there's no way to answer that truthfully and not sound arrogant, you know? Mm-hmm. Which is whatever. We're talking about Good Charlotte's posturing. So, first of all, let me say this. Good Charlotte is not in the book, but also, like, MxPx. I thought about this because I sent a book to Mike Herrera from MxPx, and cool. I always feel like they're going to be offended that their music's not in it. But I've also had, like, friends of mine in real life ask if they're in it, and I tell them, you don't want to be in this book. Like, if you're in this book, it's not. I've said the
same thing when people have asked if there's anything about them in my book, and I'm like,
you don't.
I don't talk to the person that, you know, inspired the title of the book. I don't talk to that person anymore. So, like, you don't want to be in my book.
And so for instances, like, for bands like Good Charlotte and MxPx, like, I still listen to their stuff all the time, but they're, like, happy music to me, you know?
Right.
So, like, that's why they're not in this book, is because there's not really happiness in it. But, okay, so back to your question, which was, now I forgot.
When you were growing up, did you always believe that you would make it?
Yeah. I always knew, like, that I learned really young that I could make things happen. You know, like, I started my first band when I was 14, and I was a singer. And by the time I was, 16, we had played in front of, like, 10,000 people.
Wow.
And, like, we were playing every weekend around Texas. And so that came from just me being, wanting it so bad that I was making calls and sending demos and trying to get us booked places and trying to get us on shows. And this is, like, before the internet,
right.
It's so, like,
you couldn't just, like, DM someone on Twitter.
Yeah, exactly. And I never thought, like, it was gonna be easy. I never thought, like, oh yeah, I'm totally gonna make it and it's easy. Like,
yeah.
And it wasn't. I just learned how to work my ass off and go after what I wanted. And that's what made it work. Like, I mean, I graduated college at, like, 28, I think 28 or 29, and that's when I moved to New York. So I've only been here for 8 years, but you know, I when I was 22, I moved to LA, and you know, I thought I wanted to be an actor, but then I realized I didn't. I just wanted to write, and so I started writing out there. And then I moved to Nashville and worked as a booking agent at a small label. But I always knew that, like, I knew what I wanted to do, or like at least what industry. I wanted to be around music, and I wanted to be, and I'm a creative person. And so I just always knew that I had to, like, I never like had any reason to believe anything would ever be handed to me, because nothing ever was. And so I guess just like that, that's how I learned, like, okay, anything cool that's ever happened to you, you worked for it. So work for it. And maybe that, like, you have no reason to believe anything else, like that you can get anything without working your ass off for it. So I've never known how to do it any differently, you know?
Yeah.
And I mean, that's like, I got hired at Comedy Central like before I graduated, because I interned. I mean, they like offered me a job, and I was graduating in like 2 weeks. And so they offered me a job. And so as soon as I graduated college, I moved to New York. But I got that job because I interned there for 5 months in like the last fall semester of my college, or when I was in college. And I busted my ass 5 days a week, no pay, and, you know, worked with everybody I possibly could. And that's how I got a job that allowed me to move to New York, you know?
Yeah.
It's so, yeah, I always believed, when I was at Comedy Central, I won an Emmy, and I always like joke, it sounds cocky, but I always joke that, like, if you would have told me that I'd have an Emmy, you know, from working at Comedy Central, you know, 10 years ago, I'd say, yeah, that sounds right. Because like, I always want to be the best at what I do. So like, I'm not saying I am the best at anything, but I'm always like, I don't do anything without wanting to be the best at it. You know, it's like, I want this book to be the best. I want to make it a TV show that's a great TV show, you know? So like, yeah, if you told me that I'm, you know, gonna win awards and things, then I mean, of course I believe that, because that's the goal, is to be the best at what you do, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I mean, look, I have not at all made it. You know, was still living paycheck to paycheck last year, because my wife was going to nursing school, and now she's a nurse, and so now we're a little bit better off. But yeah, no, I can't just like get any job I want, you know, even with my resume and like having cool stuff on it, like Rolling Stone and Billboard. Like I can't, you know, write music reviews for a paycheck. I wish I could, but like, yeah, no, so I haven't like made it or anything. I just keep working. That's it.
Yeah. No, and I mean, I love everything you've said, and I think that ties really well into our song. And you know, there's a line in this song, they talk about wanting to be self-made millionaires, and there was, I'll link this in the show notes for sure, but there was a really, really great interview with Alternative Press a few years ago that the headline was just like, how Benji and Joel became self-made millionaires. And I found a few great pieces from the Washington Post, you know, their hometown paper. But this one was called Mastering the Geek Tragedy. And it came out a little bit after this album came out. You know, Benji is talking about mailing photos to record labels and saying, you can sign us now for cheaper, or you can sign us later. Which didn't work. But
I've totally had that like frame of mind too. And I still
you
say
can hire
it too.
me as an unpaid intern now, where you can pay me $50,000 a year later.
Yeah. And like, I still say that to like, when I, like, now I have a full-time job as I produce some direct commercials, but, before my wife went to nursing school, I was just running my own production company. And I would tell that to clients all the time. Like, look, you can here's like the budget that you're going to need. And you can probably find someone who's going to do it for cheaper, but you're not going to find someone who's going to do it as well as I'm going to do it for this price. So, you know, you can get like the good stuff, or you can, you know, save some money and not, you know, have somebody with my experience making your videos, you know? Yeah. So I've always been, and it's, you know what, I'm not like that about things I'm not good at. Yeah. And I also don't really try to do things that I'm not good at. Like, I know what I'm good at. And so like, why would I waste my time trying to do anything else? So yeah, I mean, that's why I picked this song, and it's why, you know, I love this song. I, you know, might not have been completely sober, but I danced to this entire record yesterday. Like,
I love that.
Because my wife and I just went to Philly for the weekend.
Yeah.
And because two of my friends, and I know I told you this, but I'll just give a preface here. My best friend just moved to Philly from Texas with his girlfriend. And we went there to visit them, and we all got an Airbnb together and got wasted the night before. So everybody was kind of, some people were dragging hungover. I think I was still drunk when I woke up, but I put this record on because they're my friends. Like, we do South by Southwest together every year. And somehow this record always comes on, and we just play it and like drink and like dance around to it. Even, you know, last year, like 2 years ago at South by. So I played it, and I just stood in the living room just like dancing to every song. But like, I picked this song because like, just because of that. It's like they, you know, talk about coming from nothing. You know, they talk about their dad not being around. My dad wasn't around when I was a kid. And, you know, it does give you that drive. It's like, you know, we, you know, just talked about my, you know, career or whatever, but that's exactly like still so tied to this song, because like, I have friends who have, you know, complimented me on my hustle and my drive, and say like, I have a cousin who actually, you know, his parents have quite a bit of money, and he's told me, he was like, I'll never know how to be like you. Like, he, you know, he has looked up to me, and like going to LA and doing what I do in New York. He's like, I've just had it too easy. And like, I see that you have this drive, and I just don't know how to have that. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know if you can get it, you know, when you've had life easy, but my life sucked, man. I was so poor growing up. And that's why this song is just like, it still holds up completely to me, because I just totally get it. And then just to see them, like, despite, you know, having personal issues with them that probably aren't more, which I just don't anymore, but I did hold on to that for quite a while. And I think if I ever met them, I would still bring it up. And I maybe still look for Mark Immerman on Facebook. I'm surprised I haven't crossed paths with him again, man, as much as I've like stayed in this scene and like worked behind the scenes and stuff.
It's like a small world, and there's a lot of people that, you know, you had reached out, like, you know, Mike, I had just reached out to you, I think, on Facebook about doing this, and you were like, oh, have you been, you know, getting the press releases? And I was like, hell yeah, like, I love the, you know, the girls with big picture. I you know, I'm always in touch with them. Yeah, no, I love them too, and I'm glad they came up, because they keep coming up in the podcasts or interviews I do, and I want them to get all the props in the world for how good they are at what they do. Did you know a guy named Josh Stern? He like tour managed bands like in the same. I don't think so, but I may have. But I want to say he was on the road with Newfound Glory on that tour. Okay. He passed away a couple years ago, but he was on that tour, and he. It's funny because he, like, I had met him through a guy I worked with in Austin, and maybe 10 years later, I went to a show with, do you know Runner? Oh, yeah. They toured with Good Charlotte once upon a time. Oh, really? Yep. Yeah. Okay. This wasn't that. I'm trying to think of what show it was, though, because it was in Corpus Christi, and it was the big venue. So, like, anyway,
he was on the road with Runner that year, and it had to be like at least 7-8 years after the Good Charlotte incident. And he was at the merch table, and I was like, I had interviewed Runner, and he saw me, and he was like, "Hey, did you interview MxPx and Stretch Armstrong at the Honda Civic Tour a long time ago?" I was like, "Yeah."
Oh God.
And he was like, "I have that tape." Like,
what?
I had, yeah, like 9 years later, he's like, "I have that tape." And I was like, "Are you serious, dude?" And he like gave me his number so we could like get in touch, and I could get that tape. But I think like, I don't remember why I didn't get in touch with him, but I think maybe he was just on that tour for a long time.
And he just like had seen the tape and like,
I guess recognized. Maybe he like recognized me, but also, you know, put it together that I was like press there interviewing the band. But yeah, so that was crazy. So like I could have got that tape back, but I don't know what happened.
That's crazy.
Yeah, because it's a small world, man.
It's a very small world. So, Mike, how many years now have you lived in New York? You were saying like 8-9 years?
Yeah, June 1st was 8 years for me. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you've lived in New York for quite a while now, and that's, you know, it's a city that people move to so that they can, you know, take that dream job or find that dream job or, you know, just make their dreams come true.
Yeah.
How has your relationship with this city and, you know, your feelings about New York changed since the time you had initially wrote the book?
Well, I don't know if they have changed much because, like, I feel like I was still optimistic about it.
Yeah.
Despite, you know, being in a bad moment in the book.
Right.
And so, I mean, I guess it's feeling more like home to me, which is weird because, like, I also moved around a lot.
Yeah, you moved around a bunch.
And yeah, I mean, ever since I was 18, I moved like I never stayed anywhere longer than 2 years. So from 18 to like 29, I didn't stay anywhere longer than 2 years. And then I've been in New York now for 8 years. So since I was 29, this is the longest place I've lived as an adult, which is crazy.
You know, I'm vaguely remembering when I did an interview with you about Zero Platoon in like 2014, you had said something that like you just re-signed your lease and it was going to be the first time you lived anywhere longer than 2 years.
Yeah, no, and that would have been correct because, I moved in here in 2012. And so, yeah, that's crazy. But, you know, around that time in 2014, I was thinking about moving back to Texas.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
So before I signed that lease, because I was still dealing with that kind of like depression of like not really having close friends here. Not, you know, just kind of running into bad luck in like the dating world.
Yeah.
And just kind of not feeling real good about the job that I had at, like towards the end of the Comedy Central time, I started to like recognize the whole corporate thing that I don't do well in. And, you know, it had lost its like, you know, excitement because I had hit that wall where it's just like, didn't seem like I was going to advance there. And so I had to decide like, you know, and I just like struggle so hard with the whole corporate environment. It's like people don't really like, and I mean, I guess it's not everywhere, but you know, people just don't, there are bigger things that they're thinking of. So they don't really think of people on like a personal level and how like, I just feel like you're underappreciated in most corporate situations. And I, that's one of the hardest things for me to deal with because of that hustle. Like I will always work my ass off to be the best at what I do. But if I don't like feel appreciated or respected for that, then like, why do I want to keep doing it for someone else? You know, that's so hard for me to deal with, but that's what the whole fucking corporate world is built on. It's like, you're doing it for someone else. And in my experience, more often than not, I've not been appreciated for it, you know?
Yeah.
So that's why like I started my own production company, and that's why I'm putting out this book, because like I'll work my ass off to the point I need to make things happen with these things, and nobody can, you know, ruin that for me, you know?
Right. I relate to that a lot, and I think that's a common theme with a lot of people who are creative, right? Whether they're writers or filmmakers or whether they're musicians. Not to, you know, obviously we're talking about a song that's much earlier, but, you know, Good Charlotte would talk about when they went on hiatus in 2011, they just felt like the band kind of wasn't theirs anymore.
Yeah.
So they came back and they were independent for that first album after the comeback. Are
they independent now?
No, their last record, Generation RX, was on a label.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I had asked Billy about that when I interviewed him, and he said that, you know, they wanted to get the record out to more people, you know, make sure they could essentially give it its due.
That's surprising that they couldn't just like make that happen on their own. Cause like I was just listening to Mike Herrera's podcast, and like MxPx is completely independent. Like they put out their own records. And I would think Good Charlotte could do that too.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure they could, you know, but who knows, you know?
Well, yeah. And it's also like, I mean, it's the same thing with like this book, like self-publishing book. It's like, it's a full-time job for me. If I want this book to sell copies, I have to be like promoting it on social media, you know, trying to like find new ways to promote it so I'm not annoying people. And like coming up with, I don't know, like recording audiobook chapters, and it's a pain in the ass. It's a lot of work, and I'm sure putting out a record is you know, just as crazy.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. So I did want to go on to a topic that is a very different topic, but very relevant for this song, and really hasn't been touched on the podcast yet, is I think the Beastie Boys influence.
Oh yeah, I saw that on your notes. That's crazy.
Yes. So, I mean, me being very diehard fan for many years, I knew this, that, you know, Benji and Joel had been inspired to start a band. They went to see Beastie Boys on the Ill Communication Tour, 1995. And they were just like, we need to start a band. So was this something that like you had known at all?
No, not at all. And I'm just thinking about it as we're talking about it now, that like, man, I want to know if you like talk to them again or interview them again.
Yeah.
I want to know how close they were to being like a Limp Bizkit rap rock band.
Right.
You know, if they were like that influenced or inspired by the Beastie Boys, like I wonder how they got into like the sound that they had, like the pop punk sound.
I know. And I think, you know, you can hear a little bit of the hip hop influence kind of in this. But I think about that too. And, you know, obviously I've listened to a couple of Beastie Boys songs. There was a Kerrang piece where Joel listed like 10 songs that changed his life. And he named Beastie Boys So What You Want. And he says that it's the song that I first fell in love with. It was the one where I was like, this is my favorite band. I don't know. You know, I talk about this with friends, that if Good Charlotte were to like start the band now, they would be like emo rap.
You think so?
I think so. I mean,
I think that's maybe because of like the directions that they've gone in now. But
yeah,
I think they've gone in those. I think they've gone in those directions because of like where music was going at those times, you know. So I mean, yeah, maybe you're right. Yeah,
but yeah, no, that it is funny to think about that, because you know, it's a very prevalent thing in you know, Good Charlotte fan lore, so to speak, that Benji and Joel saw the Beastie Boys and knew they had to start a band. So I would love to know. I think that'd be cool to ask them about, like, so how did you sound like this?
Yeah.
I will say it's such an optimistic song. Some of the like ticky ticky, it's a little funny.
No, I know. I always do that. I always do that when it comes up. I always do like the repeated stuff on Little Things.
Yes.
Or like the background vocals. No, I mean, I loved that then, and I still love it now. You know, it's like this record, it's still like, I still hear it with the same ears as I heard it back then. Like, it's still fun for me. It still like makes me feel good. And I mean, for me back then, this was like, I loved it probably for the reason a lot of like real punks probably hated it, because this was like an introduction to punk into the mainstream.
Exactly.
Whereas like, and I mean, I know that like people say Green Day is pop punk, and you know, I guess Blink-182 had been out there already, but
Good Charlotte's a little different, I think.
Oh, totally different. But what I was getting at with Green Day is that like that was still kind of, you know, tough.
Yeah.
When like Dookie came out and stuff, like they were still pretty like.
Green Day did not have a song called "Thank You, Mom."
Yeah, exactly. It's so like Good Charlotte was it. They were like, they kind of made it, you know, for lack of a better term, I'm not like insulting them, but they kind of softened it up. Yeah. And so like, but I enjoyed that I was getting, like, I'm not one of those people who like was like, oh, this band fucking sold out, I hate them. Like, I don't care about that. I was happy to see the things that I liked on MTV, you know, because then that validated my taste. Like,
yes, I love that.
Because if you like before, like, you know, Good Charlotte and like Sum 41 and Simple Plan like kind of all hit and like brought pop punk into the mainstream. Because I feel like Blink-182 had kind of like fallen off a little bit at this point.
Yeah, I want to say the self-titled.
That was like 2002.
Enema of the State was 2000. Take Off Your Pants and Jacket was 2002. I think self-titled was 2003.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know, but I was just happy to like see this. I felt like it helped more punk come out, you know?
Yeah, totally.
It's so and maybe it's because they were so like, you know, clean, you know, like maybe that's the difference between them and Blink, because Blink was still popular around those years.
Blink was so crude. Yeah,
and these guys were like still kind of punk, but also like, you know, family friendly, I guess.
Yeah, for sure.
And so they were able to kind of make it, you know, bring punk a little more out into the mainstream, because like before that, the popular punk bands were Green Day and Blink-182, and you know, you got Green Day singing about masturbating and you got Blink singing about masturbating. So these guys probably were like the first kind of, you know, family friendly pop punk, right?
Yeah, and I feel like also a little more. I mean, I feel like, you know, there's a little more like emotional.
I was just gonna say that. Yeah, because their songs are very like personal, and that's probably a thing that helped them out too. It's like, you know, Blink and Green Day weren't doing that.
Do you know who who I was just thinking about last night as we talk about introduction to punk?
Who's that?
Avril Lavigne, who
I
had her CD, you know, probably 6 months before I bought The Young and the Hopeless, and like at the time it was the coolest thing in the world. And you know, I reached a point where I was like, oh my god, I hate her, she's terrible, and literally snapped that CD. But like I look back at it and like I wish I hadn't been so ashamed, because how cool is it that there was a female artist that was introducing girls to this concept of punk, you know, as mainstreamed as it is. But
yeah, for sure. No, I was into that, you know, early stuff that she did.
Yeah.
I also just remembered, or I didn't just remember, but I pulled it up a minute ago, that the last time I saw Good Charlotte perform was the Bamboozle Road Show in 2010.
Yes. Yes.
And I saw it in San Antonio, Texas at a Six Flags, and Hanson was on it.
Oh my God.
Forever the Sickest Kids were on it.
That tour was wild.
I'm trying to think who else was on that, because I see the list here, but who was on my leg?
I saw that tour on Long Island, and it was like Good Charlotte, Simple Plan, All Time Low, Forever the Sickest Kids,
I think
LMFAO.
Simple Plan was there too.
Yeah.
When I saw it. And maybe Third Eye Blind too, yeah.
Yes, Third Eye Blind I think was on that.
Man, that was a crazy tour in Hanson.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, why not?
Yeah. So yeah, that was the last time I saw them. So it has been a decade.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So Mike, did you get to check out that Los Angeles Worldwide track that I
did.
mentioned?
Yeah.
So listeners, you probably know, but Los Angeles Worldwide was included on Good Charlotte's 2008 Greatest Remixes compilation, and it's basically a follow-up to this song, instead of wanting to go to parties where they've got no guns, they talk about DJing parties where they've got no guns. And now instead of saying everything's gonna be all right, they just say everything's all right.
Yeah.
It's fun, and it's kind of meta, I think, but
yeah, it's cute.
Yeah, it's fun, I think, to hear them be like, because Good Morning Revival, I love that album, but it can be very jaded and cynical and frustrated with like Hollywood and fame and such. So it was really nice that like after hearing that they did have a song where they're like, wow, like we really have made like a lot of our dreams come true.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. Like, I just listened to it actually before we started talking. Yeah, no, it's good. And I mean, like when I was listening to this song yesterday, and I was like dancing in the living room of this Airbnb, my wife was on the couch and I was singing and I go, I want a hot girl and a little bit of money. Mission accomplished.
Yes, I love that for you.
But yeah, I mean, but there's still, we're all still trying to get to the next thing. So
yeah.
But yeah, no, I guess they still are, like I hope, like listening to that, it was good to like see that they're, looking at it from maybe they were cynical and jaded for a while, which happens.
Yeah.
But hopefully, they've come around, and like there's a line in that remix where he says like something about like taking away the gold records, and he's got his wife and kids, and that's still a lot, or something like that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so that's cool. Like, yeah, I mean, and that's something like, actually I was talking about this because my buddy I went to go visit in Philly, he was the drummer in my ska band. But we were talking about how like it's hard to like stop doing things because you feel like, and this is such a stupid thing to feel because nobody really cares about what you're doing. But it's like, I feel like if I don't do something, if I don't like put out a new video or something, people are going to be like, oh, what happened to Mike? He hasn't done anything in like 6 months.
It took me like almost a year from when I said, probably 10 months from when I thought about ending Circles and Sound Waves till when I actually ended it.
Yeah.
For that reason. Yeah,
no, for sure. And it's so stupid, like, because then you just end up half-assing something anyway.
Yeah.
But so yeah, like, it's so hard when you have something that was successful, and then how hard it was to get there, and then you have to decide, like, am I going to jump back into how hard the next thing's going to be to reach this point, or do I just stay here? And so like, it's good to hear that like remix to say that like, that's usually to have that kind of mindset, it usually takes like getting mentally healthier and realizing what truly is important. And I think that's like something that happened. That's why this book is out now. That's why my book is out now. Is because I am mentally healthier. And so like, I don't have to care about what other people think of it or anything. I just like want to do what's important to me, and putting that book out and, doing what's next. That's what's important to me. Like, so yeah, you start to realize like, you don't have to worry about that shit because like nobody really cares. And, nobody's like keeping tabs on how, productive or how productive I am, like, except me.
I love that. And I think I relate to what you talk about with the timing of the book too. Obviously mine was not quite as long of a time frame from, the title piece anyway, which like I wrote this poem, I Told You I Hated New York. And that was kind of like, I had this idea floating around in my mind for a while of like, okay, I want to do this like sort of anthology collection.
Yeah.
And as soon as I wrote that poem, I had been in a very, very heartbroken place. Yeah. And I wouldn't say I was over it by that point, but that was like, okay, I can like kind of see some hope.
Yeah.
But it did, like, I definitely needed to get to a better place before I could actually put that book together.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah. Because you also, have to be able to handle the, what does come from it and other people knowing it and all that stuff.
Yeah. So back to Waldorf Worldwide a little bit. One thing that I found in my research, which was like exciting, but kind of maddening a bit, was apparently Good Charlotte did like a fan-made video contest for this song.
Oh, really?
Yes. The winners were Mo Shafiq and Kirsten Liu from New York City, but I searched and I couldn't find the video online. This was before YouTube, so I imagine they, mailed in VHSs. Yeah. But I like want to keep searching and hey, I mean, I know that the band has like listened to the podcast and promoted it, so hopefully that'll help.
They have?
They have, yeah.
That's awesome.
It's very cool, yeah. But I just hope that as it continues to grow, that like maybe
they'll apologize to me for Mark Emmerman.
Yeah, and I just hope that like maybe the people who made this fan-made video that won the contest will get in touch. Maybe they still have a tape somewhere.
Yeah, that'd be cool to talk to them.
It would be very cool. I found like a handful of fan-made videos for some songs, which is really, really fun. And they varied from like montages to skits. It's been very cool.
Yeah.
Mike, so how has Waldorf Worldwide held up for you over time?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's still, this whole record just holds up the same, and I think that's like, I think if there's anything that like I'll still listen to today, it's because it held up, or yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to think of like what doesn't hold up anymore, because like this period of music for me was just so, instrumental in who I am and who I became. And all of it, like from the first like MxPx record, Teenage Politics, the first that I heard, to like the Bad Religion and Pennywise I was listening to over and over and over, to Rancid and Out Come the Wolves, like everything that I listened to from like 97, 98 or 96, actually, from 96 to 2002 or whatever, like I still listen to all the time.
Yeah.
And it's because that's the stuff that made me who I am today, like all the principles of punk rock, but also like stuff like this that like made it okay to like talk about your dad not being around and how much that hurt you, Like not being ashamed of, talking about your feelings and stuff like that. So like, it all still holds up for me.
I love that. So just 2 more questions to wrap up, Mike. What has Good Charlotte meant to you over the years, and how has that changed?
I mean, like, because I stopped listening to them for a long time.
Right.
But I mean, going back to this record, like, and this song, they still mean exact same thing. I mean, in 2000, I was 17, and when this record came out, I was 17, and September to November of 2000, I was on tour with my ska band, and I turned 18 on the road. So like hearing these guys and knowing that they were like, not that much older than me, kind of came from the same or had a similar background, but were actually like making it in the thing that I wanted to make it in, and I was on tour with my band. So like it just meant, that's what it meant to me. It meant that like here are these like big rock stars, singing about their experience, and that's all I'm doing. So like maybe I can get there too,
I love that. That's awesome, Mike. I've loved talking to you about your book and about Waldorf Worldwide.
Thanks. No, I love talking to you too.
Oh, this has been great. So do you have any last words about Waldorf Worldwide, about Good Charlotte, about Rock Bottom at the Renaissance, or about yourself?
Let me see. I think everybody should go back and listen to this song, and no matter what, kind of take the message with you. That like, if you believe in yourself, I know it sounds cheesy, but like, just, if you believe in yourself and you think you can do something, like try to do it, because I don't know, the only thing that ever gets in our way is us. Like, you can blame it on people, doubting you or whatever, but it doesn't matter. Like, people can doubt you, like a million people can doubt you, but if you believe you can do something cool, like, you can usually probably do it. I mean, I got to do a lot of cool things because I believed I could. I got to freaking work at Rolling Stone for like a couple months. Like, and that, as somebody who like started a zine with his brother to like interview bands, like, that's a fucking dream,
Oh yeah.
And so, there's like no reason why like a kid like me should be able to, like, I don't know. I think if people, said it to me, of course I'd believe it, but like, I don't think people I went to high school with ever thought like I'd work at Rolling Stone or comedy or have an Emmy from Comedy Central, and it's all just because like I worked hard for it, and that's all it really takes. It can be a pain in the ass, and it could suck, and it could, break your heart, and there's ups and downs, but Good Charlotte has them too. They disappeared for a couple years, and so yeah, that's it. To take that from this, don't let anybody stop you from doing what you want to do.
I love that. And Mike, where can people find you on the internet?
So I am a Berger Joint everywhere. So it's ABERGER Joint, all one word, on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. My website is bergerjoint.com. You can find stuff about the book on there.
Perfect.
That's about it.
Love that. Mike, thank you so much for coming on.
No, thanks for having me. That was fun.
That was been great. Listeners, thank you for tuning in. Last week, we talked about Cold Song from Generation RX. Next week, we'll be talking about a song from The Young and the Hopeless.
Hey, can I say one more thing? Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt your smooth outro. But since people are already listening to a podcast, I have a podcast too, kind of.
Yes.
I just made it so I could like drop audiobook chapters from my book. That's also a Berger Joint. So you can find it on Apple and on Spotify. But I also like throw some Zero Platoon interviews up on there too, because I'll interview bands for like an hour, but then turn it into a 15-minute video. So I'll throw the extended interviews on the podcast. So yeah, you can find the Berger Joint podcast out there too.
Yes, listeners, definitely check that out. Mike's done some amazing interviews with Zero Platoon. And as always, you can follow Generation GC at Generation GC Pod on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can follow me, Molly, at Hudelson, MHUDELSON on Twitter and Instagram. And make sure to subscribe to the show on iTunes and leave a review. And please share it. Tell a friend. Tell all your friends. Even if they don't like Good Charlotte, tell them to listen to this podcast. Thank you all for tuning in.